What is up, everybody, and welcome to Believe in Bears. Oh, man, this is the podcast that we've been waiting for, not just you guys. We are your hosts, Gabe Ramirez, Marshall Harris, and, of course, 9-year NFL vet, Clay Harbor. Fellas, how y'all feeling, man?
I feel great. I feel tremendous. I've been waiting on this. Let's get it started. Let's get it popping. I'm as anticipatory and excited about this as I am the actual Bears regular season, which we know starts in another 3 weeks.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah, I know.
Excellent. It's a beautiful day. The sun was a little bit brighter today. You know, the colors are a little bit brighter today. Everything just seems a little bit better because I think after the performance from Caleb, we're obviously going to get in on that, but we found ourselves a quarterback and a lot of good things that he did we're going to talk about, but the whole team, I thought there's a lot of good things, and we're looking at a team this year that I've been trying to tell Gabe is going to be competitive, but you know, we're still young, but I think this team can honestly compete for a division.
We'll get into all those opinions in just a second and how Clay likes to lie, because if it was up to Clay, we'd still have Justin Fields on the center.
That's absolutely true.
Let's introduce ourselves to the people, man. Of course, you got 3 heavy hitters here in Chicago, but for those of you that are just listening for the first time, I am Gabe Ramirez, a longtime, lifelong Chicagoan, man. Born and raised here in the city of Chicago. I bleed Bears orange out of my veins, so you will get a fan's perspective. But I've learned from my good friend Marshall Harris how to be an analyst. I've been on 670 The Score here for a while, sharing my thoughts on the Bears, doing Bears post-game coverage. Also do Fox 32 coverage for the Chicago Bears as well. So again, my fandom bleeds out, but I still got some credentials that allow me to talk about the Bears. But next up, this guy has the real credentials. No, I'm not talking about Clay Harbor. I'm talking about my guy Marshall, man. Tell the people, Marshall, why you are actually able to be on this podcast and speak from a point of expertise.
Well, because I'm not from Chicago, right? I've been here the last 3 years covering the Bears, the Bulls, the White Sox, the Cubs, whatever. I've covered it all. You know, here's the thing. I bring a little objectivity to the table so that when Clay and Gabe start bleeding out with all their Bears fandom, I'm there to stop the hemorrhaging, if you will. That's the goal. I'm here as not a straight man per se, but someone to keep a little bit better perspective from an overall
like
what's really going on. Yeah, I mean, look, I love Chicago. This is one of those cities that if you love it, it will love you back. And I've really enjoyed my time here. I've worked with both Clay on 670 The Score, and I worked with Clay. I used to cover this guy when he was playing football for the Philadelphia Eagles. So the 3 of us, we're going to get along just fine. We may disagree, but we're all going to bring a little different perspective. But, you know, only one of us can say, hey, I played in the league. That would be you, Clay Harbor.
Yes. And if you guys listen to this, my name is Clay Harbor, played 9 years in NFL, 3 years for Philly, 4 years for Jacksonville, half year for the Patriots, half year for Lions, and year for the Saints. Yes, you did not hear the Chicago Bears there, but I am from Chicago. I am a Bears fan. I've always born and raised Bears fan. My dad still talks about the 1985 Bears. I think we're going to finally change that in the next couple of years. But he still talks about the 85 Bears, Sweetness and all the guys. So from my perspective, you're going to get the player's point of view. And Gabe and Marshall know I love a couple good statistics because men lie, women lie, numbers don't. But the player perspective, how the players are feeling about things, what's going on in the locker room, what they're doing on the field, what it looks like when you're on the field there. So my job here is to keep the players' perspective and give that to y'all.
Guys, let's start off with, the Bears game yesterday. Bears get the victory against the Cincinnati Bengals, of course. You know, a situation where, you're facing a team all week long and then you get to go up against them. Clay, I want to talk to you first, right? I mean, obviously you've been in that situation before, mixed practices. I mean, obviously the coaching staff made a decision to play Caleb Williams despite the fact that team had been seeing him all week. Did you think that was the right decision? And how do you think Caleb Williams fared?
Absolutely the right decision. I think the joint practices are great because obviously you're used to playing all preseason, all OTAs, you're playing against the same defense, the same type of defense, the same players. You're getting the same moves. You're getting the same 2-shell, roll to one. You know how the Bears play the defense with the Matt Eberflus. So now you get a chance to get a different perspective. You're seeing different defenses. You're seeing different offenses. You're seeing different blitzes. You're seeing different coverages. So Caleb needs time against that because different teams are going to do different things to him. And once he starts getting some film out there, there's going to be a lot of different coverages that they're disguising and you got to see a little bit of that. Obviously, we haven't watched the coaches' film yet, but from the TV copy, it does seem like they're still mixing up coverages even in the preseason. So I thought that was great for Eberflus to keep him in there a little longer than everybody probably expected, because he had to get some momentum going. I'll be honest. There was some good and there was some bad in this game. Everybody's talking about the good. But he started off, he missed 2 or 3 throws. He missed a couple reads. But to me, him coming back out and responding to that was the most impressive thing. Even more impressive to the rolling left, throwing the deep ball to Odunze, rolling out, giving the little jerk to the DN, breaking contained, throwing a ball to Odunze, who should have kept his feet in. The rushing touchdown, to me, him coming back out after that start where he's missing guys, he's just not in rhythm, and doing what he did, that showed me a lot there, that this guy is not going to be a guy that lets the game get to him and will just spiral. So to me, that was the most impressive part.
Clay, one of the big things we need to talk about is, yes, we are all keeping our eyes on Caleb Williams, the hopes, the dreams, the lifelong, will the Bears ever get a franchise quarterback? You know, someone who might be able to throw for 4,000 yards, because that's never happened before. Will that happen in the coming years? That's what we're all watching. But I want to take a moment to point out the evolution of the head coach, Matt Eberflus, as he starts here in year 3. Here's what's important. We are seeing him learn in real time from his mistakes of the past. We know coaches, front office members, players themselves, they can be arrogant. They can be so self-assured and self-righteous that they don't want to pivot, you know. But what we saw in this week was a guy willing to pivot, because last year, if you remember, the Bears had 2 joint practices against the Indianapolis Colts. Matt Eberflus said Justin Fields doesn't need to play in the preseason game because he got just as good a work in those preseason.
Not the same.
It's not the same. The joint practices as the preseason. So he doesn't play, and the Bears and Justin Fields, they stumble, they trip, they fall on their faces to an 0-4 start, which puts a death knell on their entire season and says, this is how it's going to go. Now, they responded in the second half of the season. They finished 7-10, which wasn't what we thought they were going to do after losing the first 4 games in the manner that he did. But the fact that he did that, and then during the preseason game against the Bengals, Caleb Williams didn't look great the first 3 drives. He looked a little out of sorts, as you mentioned, Clay, but he kept him out there. Ryan Poles gave an interview on the broadcast talking about he was happy to see that even though they had a plan for Caleb Williams, they were able to adjust and say he needs to be out there a little bit longer. So we got a 4th drive and we got a 5th drive. After the 4th drive, Caleb Williams looked frustrated, even though he did draw the big pass interference penalty on Tyler Scott. Mm-hmm. Yeah, even though he did that and they were able to get a field goal, he's like, I want to get into the end zone. So on the next drive, we see him hook up with Rome Odunze, who they weren't necessarily on the same page in that first game, but they quickly figured it out. And now you've got a guy who's got confidence going in, and we wonder, will we see him on the short week against Kansas City?
No, absolutely not.
You don't want to see him. Even though they haven't reached that threshold of what they thought he needed to see, you still don't want to see him, because I'm just saying, Matt Eberflus has shown me that he's willing to adjust as a head coach, much like he did with his makeover from his wife. He's done doing big things. But he's taking instruction from other people.
But Clay, excuse me, Marshall, this is what I was trying to say. It's different, though. Justin Fields had years under his belt. Right, Caleb Williams is yet to see the field, so of course you're going to change your opinion and handling of your quarterback when you got a rookie that's coming in.
So you don't want to give him the credit for adjusting, even with the joint practice single versus 2.
I think in this situation, everybody knows Caleb needs some snaps. The last thing you want to do is say, hey, Caleb Williams, we're not going to give you any snaps in the preseason, or we don't think that they're valuable, and then throw you into the fire. Because we saw what happened with Justin Fields the first go-around when he was in obviously Andy Dalton getting all the snaps, and then him getting thrown into the fire against Cleveland, and then it being a thing. But Clay, when you saw Caleb, though, I mean, were you crying? Were you know what I'm saying? Because I know.
The tears of joy.
Tears are real, man.
You could just see that he's a quarterback, man. And here's the thing is the numbers didn't look great when you looked at the numbers, but use your eyes, the eye test, right? And here's what I'm looking at. The way he maneuvers in the pocket and the way he keeps his eyes downfield when he's running. I mean, come on. I mean, we love, I love Justin Fields and even Lamar Jackson, guys like that. To me, when a quarterback starts scrambling and feeling in the pocket, but the whole time, even the touchdown he ran in, he didn't want to run that. He's to the last second. I want to throw. He is keeping his eyes downfield. The running is a last second if he can't find anybody. And with these receivers and tight ends, That's why I'm so excited about this year. When you got these weapons, man, and this guy's keeping his eyes downfield at the last second, you can tell he wants to throw this thing, and he can play on time. That's why I had some tears, Gabe.
Clay, I was looking at that. I was like, I think he has to run because Tevin Jenkins says, I can't do this anymore. Let's go. And he's like, I can't get this illegal offensive lineman downfield. So he's like, I guess I got to follow Tevin.
But I will say this. I love the fact that, because when you watch it again, he tucks the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like he was doing the two hands on the ball thing earlier when he was running. And then this time I loved it because it made me think from a fan's perspective, like this guy had it in his mind. I'm scoring this touchdown. I am tucking this ball, and I don't care if it's contact. I don't care if it's two guys. I'm going to truck someone, and that gets me excited. But Clay, you're right, man. Eyes down the field. You know, I saw Twitter going crazy yesterday. Justin Fields was trending. I don't know if you guys saw this.
Yeah, he did some things.
And they were like, oh, everybody's going crazy about Caleb Williams' run, but Justin Fields did this all the time. It's like, are you guys really not trying to give Caleb Williams love right now? Like after these first two preseason games, I think, don't you guys feel like after these two games, like even the Justin lovers, right? You should still at least objectively look at it and say, this guy is going to be good, or this is what the people we're talking about.
Here's what I want to say to anyone who was, and Justin Fields does look like a literal acrobat in the backfield when he's doing his thing. The problem is he has to do that thing that he does more often than anybody else because it takes him so long to read what is going on down the field and make a play. That's all what we know. Marshall, if you've watched him the last 3 years, you know this.
Marshall, we're really going to make Clay cry if we keep this up. So
okay, my bad. I'll lay off you, Clay.
Let's talk about. I know Caleb Williams got us hyped up, but there were some other things in this game that really stood out. I mean, let's start with the running back room. All right, you didn't see DeAndre Swift much in there. Khalil Herbert had a couple of good runs, but you did see someone back there who had success on his first run, and then everything after that was a dud. Of course, I'm talking about Velus Jones Jr. Fellas, when you see him in the backfield, is it still shocking to you, or does it look like, you know, a guy that's sinking slowly into the depths of the ocean and out of the NFL?
Not ocean, quicksand. Quicksand.
Oh, quicksand.
I think that's what it is. Because Clay, when you say like the way he's falling, it's just like that slow Indiana Jones style, just like, oh, I guess he's not gonna be saved by anyone. Someone needs to throw him a branch. They tried to by moving him from wide receiver to running back.
They did, and I was at camp. I was first with the notice. I said, "Hey, Velus Jones is at running back right now." Breaking news over here, Gabe. What you know about that? And
I don't.
So Velus is a guy, and I've watched him. I've tried to get behind, like, why are they keeping this guy? He can't catch. Okay, I don't want to badmouth a guy. You see him on Hard Knocks. He's a good guy. He's working hard, but the guy doesn't have hands. And they're trying to figure out a way to give him the ball because he is very explosive, even among NFL players. He's 99th percentile. This guy's a legit 4.3, 40-yard dash guy. Probably can jump out the gym. Very explosive. Change of direction. I think that's what Ryan Poles made him think to take him in the third round when everybody else had him in the fifth round. Maybe we can use his body, his ball skills. We can improve his ball skills, and we can use him as a returner. He's not a returner. He's not a kick returner or a punt returner. We already saw him drop one kickoff. So they're saying, we got to give this guy an opportunity. He can't play in the return game. He can't catch the football consistently. Let's see what he can do at running back. And if it wasn't such a deep room, he didn't look great yesterday, but I think he'd have a chance to make it at running back just because of his explosiveness. But I don't see it, man. He didn't look great yesterday. He already dropped the one toss. He just can't trust
Clay, let me ask you this, man. What is it? I mean, obviously, you know what I'm saying? You played 9 years in the NFL. When a coach comes to you, right, you get drafted to the NFL to play a particular position.
I got moved positions several times.
Where? To where?
In Philly. Marshall probably covered this. I went from tight end to deep to outside linebacker, and then I went to wide receiver. I was playing wide receiver behind Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. Okay, I was playing outside linebacker with trying to pass rush a 3-4 defense, trying to pass rush Jason Peters and Lane Johnson. Okay.
So Clay, here's what you need to know about.
I got cut. Okay. To make a long story short, I ended up getting cut. And that's probably
Gabe. Chip Kelly came in there and tried to treat him like a high school player. He's like, all right, well, let's see where we can figure out where we want to use you.
Son, you got a thick neck.
Same conversation. You're fast. We got a tough tight end room to make. We think you can play outside linebacker and do some pass rush. I go to a few practices and OTAs and outside linebacker. I go, hey, go back up to Chip's office. I don't want to play outside linebacker. You guys should trade me. trade me or cut me. I'm not an outside linebacker. I'm not going to try to learn this defense, which was completely
at the NFL level. At the NFL level.
And you can slide into offenses and things are the same, but I don't know any defensive terminology. So he goes, okay, moves me back to tight end. Then after a couple of practice at tight ends, like, oh, you're fast, man. We're going to move you to wide receiver. And my dumb butt should have realized that this is my
it's the little walk around the building before they let you go. Yeah.
So we know where Bayless is at, or where he's headed for that matter. It's going to be interesting to see.
And one more point before we get off the running backs, like that running back room. Remember, we didn't see Roshan Johnson. We didn't see DeAndre Swift. Those guys, like Khalil Herbert, is a guy who's fighting for something. So we know what he is and what he can do, but you take him into effect. You look at Ian Wheeler. You look at some of these other guys. Like, they have other fast guys. Like, they want to be dynamic with Rome Odunze on some like Bayless Jones Jr. gadget type plays. They have other fast guys who can do that and a whole lot more.
Let's not forget.
Makes a mistake. One more thing: if he drops a pass, if he fumbles a ball, if he misses a punt return, it's not even on Bayless Jones anymore. It's on Ryan Poles.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because they know what he is. I know when you draft him. I know how high you draft him. You want it to work out.
Fool me
Sometimes
once,
things don't work out.
Yeah.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. If he plays great, okay, Ryan Poles knew something we don't. But if he does anything, you've seen it over and over again. That's on you, bro. That's not on him.
Well, a lot of people would say the same thing about this offensive line situation, right? There wasn't necessarily upgrades for the Chicago Bears. Nate Davis, still a question mark at right guard. He has made his way back to practice. And then, of course, the center position still hasn't been figured out yet between Coleman Shelton and Ryan Bates. Fellas, when you're looking at this situation, and Clay, I'd love to hear you speak on this as well. When there's uncertainty going into a season at a particular position, what does it do? Not for the coaching staff. Clearly, they're looking at it through a different lens, but the players, right? Like a guy like Caleb Williams, without those two spots on the offensive line being solidified in the present, what does that do? And what do you think about the offensive line as a whole as well?
I'll say, just because I've been in battles to where offensive tackles have been competing, and you're playing next to one guy, then you're playing next to another guy. So it's different. It just takes time to get used to the way the guy takes his steps, the way the guy makes his calls. And there is this cohesiveness that you need to have when you're playing together, that you kind of get a feel for how someone plays. Obviously, there's going to be injuries and people come in and out, but you want to get used to that. And for the players that are playing next to each other, it's important because it is symbiotic. How this guy does a block, how you do this double team block together, where his hand is when you're double teaming a guy at the second level. Does he like to come off on the second level? Is he going to overtake the blocker I'm on? Am I coming off to the second level? A lot of things that go into account here. But for Caleb, it just comes down to, can these guys protect for him? I don't think he's looking at these guys and saying, oh, this guy's in here, this guy isn't. But for the offensive line, it matters who you're blocking next to, because you get that feel for who's making the calls, how these guys play, and everything like that. So for Caleb, it comes down to just give this man some time. For the offensive line, I think it is important for who you're playing next to. It's like you guys, you're over here on the score, you're on CBS, you're doing your thing. When you're playing next to a guy, when you're talking with the guy for a while, you got a good feel for him. You know what he's doing. They know what you're doing. When you throw a new guy in there sometimes and you keep switching out, it's a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Especially when you're talking about up front, we know what the struggle has been at the center position. Unfortunately, with guys that have been hurt, Ryan Bates dealing with a shoulder injury right now, Coleman Shelton getting the run. Right now, you're just making do with what you have. And Matt Eberflus said something that was pretty prophetic and pretty straight on. Everybody's going to have to play. It's the NFL. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. So we know everyone is going to have to play. The issue has been, we know the number one mantra for me in sports, the best ability, availability. Nate Davis has not been available. He hasn't been available for a long time. Just to see him back on the field was a step in the right direction to see him play in the guard spot. So now we know, okay, he is playing the guard spot. He's not ramping up. He actually played, I think it was 20 snaps or so in this preseason game. So you feel good about that. But you also have to have the next man up ready to go. And you hope that Shelton can come back and be good. But I think we're okay with, whatever it's going to be. It's just you need to know what it's going to be. If you're an offensive line coach, if you're an offensive coordinator, Shane Waldron, you have to know what you're able to work with. Injuries are going to happen, but you need to be able to know that the guys that you slate in to be the starter are at least going to start the season and be good to go.
Game plan changes. Game plan changes. Whoever's available, your player's strengths. Nate Davis, strong in the run game. You're probably going to run the ball to the right side a little more between Darnell Wright and Nate Davis if those two guys are healthy. So that's something that matters, knowing who's there and being able to count on these guys when you're making your game plan.
And there wasn't a lot of room to run in Saturday's game. There really wasn't.
No. I think even from the beginning, Bears coming out with 3 straight passes, trying to get Keenan Allen involved, trying to get guys involved, which I understand. But it'll be interesting to see what the game plan looks like come week 1, if they're going to lean on that run. Because that's something that I feel like with the Chicago Bears team, I think even though you have these weapons, you still want to put – Caleb Williams is capable, right? We've seen that. But I think you still want to put him in those situations of 3rd and short, not necessarily coming out and just throwing the ball 40, 45 times a game. Still having a game plan where you're leaning on the run. It's still Chicago. That's why you're excited. Not me, but you're excited about guys like Roschon Johnson to, be that bruiser in that backfield. Before we wrap this thing up, guys, when you're looking at that running back room, outside of Velus Jones, right? If the Bears are only to keep 2 running backs, who do you think is the odd man now? Is it a guy like Khalil Herbert or is it Roschon Johnson?
Well, here's what I'll say. We know that DeAndre Swift is the starter, right? We're excited about what he can do, not only as a running back, but also in the passing game. Roschon Johnson, to me, is a clear number 2 backup. He was drafted as such. He has played as such. He got the snaps last year and the reps.
But Khalil Herbert did a great job as a number 2. And that's why I feel like Roschon.
But hold on. Here's one of the reasons why Khalil Herbert did a great job as number 2. The Bears had one of the top rushing games in all of football the last 2 seasons. And you'd be like, okay, they can rush the ball. But there was a mask over them. The mask was Justin Fields. He created running opportunities that weren't necessarily depending on the offensive line and designed run plays.
But don't you think the opportunities will be there with 3 wide receivers and them having to play 2 deep and then them not being 8?
I got to see a better performance from the offensive line. Clay, would you agree with me on that?
Yeah, obviously the offensive line's got to improve there. But my 3 favorites, I think DeAndre Swift. I covered the Eagles last year. I did a couple of podcast networks, and I watched every single Eagles game. This guy's a real deal. We got to see a little bit of it this year, and he's had a really good camp. Been impressive in all the practices I've seen out there, catching the ball at the backfield. He's going to give you an absolute weapon because you're going to be able to line him up outside. When it's man-to-man, when it's zone, you have a receiver, a running back that can play receiver, puts a strain on a defense because now you'll see it yesterday in a couple of the big runs. You had like TJ Edwards outside because it was man-to-man on 3rd down. And now he's guarding the tight end because it's man-to-man. He's playing outside cornerback position if you're to look at it as, where they're playing. So a guy like Swift will put a strain on a defense. I think Swift is your one. He's actually decent in pass pro too. He runs harder than people think. He averaged the last 2 years. He's averaged almost 5 yards a carry, only like 4.5 last year, but 5.2 the year before. The guy can take some hits. Then I think you go Herbert. He's your home run hitter. He's fast. He's a guy that can bust a big time. Yeah. And then Roschon is a guy that on 3rd down, you need some pass pro. You need a big bruiser. You need some short yardage. Is your guy there? And then Travis Homer is a guy that special teams coach loves. You always hear him talking about Homer and how he's got a part there. You see Ian Wheeler. He's a guy who's
too many. You're right, Marshall. It's too many. Listen, Travis Homer could have helped himself catching that touchdown pass yesterday, but unfortunately, he dropped that. Probably pushed him a little bit to the back. But we're gonna have tons of discussions just like this, not only about Caleb Williams each and every podcast, but about the Bears, the direction that they're headed in, and of course, our silly little opinions. But we want to make sure you guys are following along. All right, so make sure you listen to this podcast, Believe in Bears. We're the Chicago Blitz, and you can follow Marshall, Clay, myself on social media, but you can get us everywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Apple Music, the whole 9. So make sure you're checking this out because we're going to be pumping out podcasts so that way you guys can get the inside information, whether you're in Chicago, outside of Chicago, on your favorite team, the Chicago. Even if you're facing the Bears, you just want some insider information, come listen to us because we got you guys covered. All right. So for Marshall, for 9-year NFL vet Clay Harbor, I am Gabe Ramirez, and this has been Believe in Bears.